Order online at picassospizza.net.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports podcast, where we are here to pay the bills. Jake Micah, Mike Bundt, Ajay Cebulski. We're down a couple men this week. This is not good coming out of the bye week, and we got people on the injured list. It's not ideal, but we're gonna pick up the slack here tonight. We're ready to go. We're ready to roll here. The Bills play the Carolina Panthers this week in a now all of a sudden. It went 3 weeks ago. We wouldn't have said this, but a pivotal Week 8 matchup coming out of the bye, and we're going to get into a whole lot tonight. Guys, Bundt, AJ, it's been a lot of talk, a lot of chatter on the internet the last couple weeks. I started out last week. I was crashing out. I think first of all, we had a post-game show after Monday night. We all were crashing out for a while. Tuesday was like we were feeling a little bit better, but still crashing out a little bit last week's episode. So I'm interested to hear, AJ, how are you feeling about the Bills right now as we head into this Week 8 matchup?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a big game, right? Coming off 2 losses, you get the bye week now. You're going to get Michael Hoyt back into the picture. You're going to get Larry Ogunjobi back into the mix. Maxwell Hairston's 21-day practice window opened, so he will return from injured reserve soon. So that's another player to keep an eye on. I'm feeling okay. I think, New England is continuing. Drake May is the most efficient quarterback in football right now. He leads the NFL in EPA per play. I think Josh is 8th. I don't know the exact number, but he's 8th. So still having a good year. But I think, I feel okay because I think there's – I think the Patriots, I think there really is a realistic or a more realistic possibility than in years past for the Bills to not win the division. So I think that concerns me a little bit because I think of New England's schedule, and I know they got a Cleveland team this week, but they've showed no ability to move the ball offensively. And I think they just match up well against them. So I look at it as this way. Josh Allen's the best player in the league. We're one of the best players in the league. They have to figure out ways to be better offensively. They have to be able to adjust. Joe Brady's going to need to adjust. And I think defensively, you need to figure out what you're going to do with the linebacker position. Will we see more of a Shaq Thompson in? A lot of the content creators out there, all that I have listened to, believe that Shaq Thompson is the best linebacker on the team right now. Where do they bring him in? Does he play middle linebacker and they move Terrell Bernard to weak side linebacker? Do they use more 4-3 sets, which we're seeing more out of the Bills this year? I think they're at a 24% clip, and they're actually down in their nickel defense, which is surprising to me, but because that's taking Taron Johnson out the field. So a lot of questions on defense still for me. The Jordan Poyer, Taylor Epps got like a 25% missed tackle rate. Cole Bishop's also up there with in his missed tackle rate. So defensively, it's just finding a couple of answers that can change things and hoping that Ogunjobi and Hoyt can figure it out. And offensively, I just want them to use Josh Allen more. I think that they're 31st in terms of passing the ball on first and second down, excluding 2 minutes. So I think that's another, big concern for me, that I think they do need to show a little bit more balance offensively. But I think all these things can be fixed. I think they're going to be an okay spot. I think they're still making the playoffs. But I do think, as we stand now, they're going to have to beat New England later in the year if they want the division, because I think the Patriots do have, and according to DVOA, have the easiest schedule in NFL history. So it's going to be – the Bills are going to have to win some tough games. They're going to have to beat an Eagles team. They're going to have to win a couple of games that you might have some fear about the Tampa Bay Bucks, and hope that New England drops a couple of the teams they probably shouldn't.
Yeah, that's all fair. And it's been an interesting week. I mean, when the Bills are coming off a 2-game losing streak going into a bye week, the overreactions are going to be out in full force. And that's what we saw on Sunday and over the last couple of days. And it makes sense. I mean, there's that fear that you see the Patriots get to 5-2, look really good over the Tennessee Titans. Then the Chiefs shut out the Raiders, so the Chiefs look like they might be back, and you see the Colts with a very impressive win over the Chargers, and your natural reaction is going to be, we're not as good as these teams. These teams look better than us. But you have to remind yourself, this is something that has happened repeatedly, unfortunately, over the last 5 years, where the Bills normally go through one little skid every season, and they normally pull themselves out of it. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to pull themselves out of it this year, but normally history is a good sign of what you're going to do going forward. So I give the Bills the benefit of the doubt, just like I would give the benefit of the doubt to the Chiefs that they would still probably be pretty good. Even if I said they're not the same Super Bowl team, normally good teams find a way to figure things out. Now, are there concerns on this Bills team? Absolutely. Is there more holes than what we've seen in previous years? Maybe. That's a little bit debatable to me when we break down the actual roster. Some people are acting like this is the worst 2 games that the Bills have ever played back-to-back with Josh Allen and Sean McDermott. And I could point to you and say Baltimore and Houston last year were pretty bad stretch of games. So at least in these 2 games, the Bills had an opportunity to win them. I know they lost by 10 by Atlanta, but like it was a 1-possession game for most of the second half. So I think where I'm at right now is I'm ready for the adjustments. I want to see what they plan on changing after having a couple weeks of thinking on things. And then will they go out and make a move eventually to kind of solidify things? Because we've seen a lot of the smart people like Eric Turner and Joe Moreno. They've come out with their thoughts. And there's only so much the Bills can do. And I think they will have some answers. And there's some things out there that they can do. And we can talk about those things during the show, Jake.
Yeah, well said, guys. It's I felt, like I said, way more negative coming out of the game last week and early last week, but just how the reaction has been around the Bills. And then watching the league this week, like you said, it is frustrating to see, some results around the league and teams in the positions they're at in the standings. Like everybody, honestly, if the Bills, like I think seeing the Bills second place in the AFC East just triggers a lot of people. I've had people telling me today because I put out a little tweet making fun of the Ravens because we're just trying to get the vibes up, get a laugh going, whatever about the Ravens saying that the game they were really hurt, their mentality was hurt after losing. So I was like, hey, the Bills broke the Ravens, and I got multiple comments that were like, the Patriots broke the Bills. I'm like, yo, listen, like one team's 1-5, one team's 4-2, coming off a 2-game losing streak, which again, like I don't like that it's happened all these years, but it is a proof point. Like it's happened all these years, and this team has been okay. They've been fine afterwards. They've been able to make adjustments later in the season. I think the crash out has gone too far now, where fans are all of a sudden thinking this is just going to be some middling team. And I just think, I don't know, when you just watch play around the league, like maybe the Colts, like I'm going to have to start turning my tune on the Colts eventually. I don't know if you guys saw this stat, but they have the best EPA per drive in NFL history through 7 weeks, even better than the 2007 New England Patriots. So I might have to change my tune on the Indianapolis Colts, but the rest of the conference going around, like I've seen the heights, I've seen the lows of all these teams. Nobody feels like an unbeatable team, and it feels like it's going to be a playoffs where, and it always is in the playoffs. It's always matchup dependent in a single game elimination tournament, especially. But this year specifically feels like there's so many flawed teams, not just in the AFC, in the NFC too, that there's might be a surprise team that just rips off a team that you don't think that rips off 3 runs and all of a sudden is in a Super Bowl. Like it feels like one of those years more than most years. And when you got Josh Allen, you have some of the talent on this roster and the infrastructure and the rapport that they've been able to have over the last couple of years. I understand concerns, and we're going to get into what we want to see change, what we think needs to get changed going forward here. But it's also like, this is not DEFCON. I never remember which level of the DEFCON is the worst, but whatever is the worst one, it's not that. Like if they lose this week, I'll allow some more crashing out, especially heading into a matchup with the Chiefs. But let's see what happens. Let's go from there. But we all have opinions, the 3 of us specifically, on what needs to change going forward and what they should change and what the biggest need to change of this team is. So AJ, offense, defense, whatever you want to start with, what is like the biggest thing you want to see done differently this week from the Bills? Starting this week for the rest of the season, I should say.
Yeah, so offensively, I guess I'll just do the offensive side of the ball, and then maybe Mike can do defensive side because I think he's had some good thoughts on what they should do defensively, and I think he's a little bit more knowledgeable at that side of the ball. Offensively, I think the Bills have to be less predictable. I think that's the one thing that I want to see them become. I think they're becoming too much of a predictable offense, especially on these second and shorts. The Bills have faced 35 second and fourth or less situations outside of the 2-minute drill so far this season, and this is courtesy of @BuffBillsStats on X. They've run the ball 27 of 35 times of those plays in those second and 4 or less situations, and they've had a good success rate, 55% and 6.1 yards per play, which is very good. So it's showing it is working, but they've thrown it 8 times with a 100% success rate and are averaging 10.9 yards per play, which is, even better. I know it's a smaller sample size, but that just kind of like my numbers as to why I think they can be a little bit more. I want to say like they need to be a little bit more creative, but they also don't at the same time in terms of situation. Like I watched last year's Rams game the other day, just the highlights, and like the amount of times we're on 3rd and 4th and shorts, they just put Josh Allen at the tush push and got the first down. Like, I don't know why they're going away from that. So I think like situationally, they have to be smarter. I think there's times where Joe Brady does get too cute in situations, especially key situations where, you're turning the ball over or you're basically, turnover on downs. But I also think that they do need to be a little bit more creative on those early downs and mix in more plays. I think we need to see less of Keon Coleman. I know Joe Marino talked about that in his recent podcast. I think his numbers are here. I have them. Keon Coleman's got some crazy separation numbers across compared to the NFL average. So among the 92 NFL wide receivers to run at least 100 routes, and this is courtesy of the Joe Marino on X, great follow. Keon Coleman ranks 86th in separation score, 70th in route win percentage, and 9th highest in negative separation routes. So I think like with him being on the field over 80% of the time, what is that really doing for the offense? I know he's a good run blocker. I know he can be a red zone target. I know he can. He was supposed to be able to win in tight coverage and be able to win those balls that are thrown from Allen. But I think at this point I haven't seen enough from him, and I do want to see more Kincaid. I mean, Kincaid's 49% snap share this year. And I think he's having the best year of his career. He needs to be on the field more, and I get he's not the best run blocker, but he has shown more of a willingness to block, whether that's in the quick screen game or in the run game. So I think we need more Dalton Kincaid, more creativity overall, and I just think Josh Allen needs to trust what he's seeing a little bit more, trust the offensive line more, the offensive line. It's basically, man, like I could sit here all day. Like there's a lot they have to do, but I think it's a lot of like things that can be fixed very quickly. And I think that's why I think when you have a Josh Allen and you have an O-line that's been together for the last couple of years, I think these fixes are very attainable. It's just a matter of, again, play calling situationally, utilizing your pieces, getting the running backs more involved in the pass catching game. And if they do those things and they're not as predictable and they're smarter in those key situations and can move the chains, I think this Bills offense will be, right back to where they should be and one of the top in the NFL. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of good points right there. And honestly, I don't think the offense really is that hard of a fix. I think we're hyper focusing on it because we're just not used to them having off games. And they've had a couple less than standard games by what we're used to seeing out of them. So we're going a little hard on them. The offense is still pretty damn good. So you got Josh Allen at quarterback. The thought is they're going to bounce back in that regard. Defensively, it's a little bit harder to fix what's going on. I'll just say this first about the offense. The Atlanta game, you didn't have Dalton Kincaid, and Josh Palmer was out of it for basically 3 quarters. Whatever game plan they had involving Josh Palmer basically was thrown out the window, and they were kind of forced into being a run team at that point. Atlanta was blitzing a ton, and the Bills had some success running the ball. But when they were put behind the chains with the pressure Atlanta was generating with their exotic blitzes, it kind of put the Bills in in a tough situation. And I don't want to make excuses, but I do think Palmer going out had a huge impact on the Bills' offensive strategy in that game. Now, their ability to bounce back, the reason I don't worry as much about offensive talent is we spend a lot of time saying they have a receiver problem. And notice how I said receiver problem, not receivers. I meant to say that singular, not in plural, because if you look at Shakir as a slot receiver, he's at least average or not above average compared to most slot receivers. If you count Kincaid as a receiving tight end, he's above average as a pass catching tight end. Josh Palmer as wide receiver 3, somebody that can get 600 plus yards, that's a very suitable wide receiver 3. And then if Curtis Samuel or Elijah Moore are your wide receiver 4 and somebody that you're doing for just jet sweeps or end arounds and short passes, you can do a lot worse than 2 guys that have had 60 plus catches before in their NFL careers. This boils down to it's a Keon Coleman usage problem. And I think it might be right a little bit what you're saying, AJ. Maybe they have to play Keon a little bit less. Probably Dalton Kincaid a little bit more. Dalton Kincaid isn't seeing the field enough. But when he is on the field, the Bills' offense has been absolutely dynamite. And when we're talking about Keon, I sometimes wonder if it's not just not a fit with the quarterback and the receiver. You think about it, Keon. Like everybody brings up his receiver analytics and his lack of separation. Well, we knew that was going to be the case. We knew he wasn't going to get separation in the NFL. So I don't know why we keep talking about, he can't get separation. He played college football and didn't get separation, but yet he was still an above average elite college football player. Why? Because he can win in other ways. Now, people keep talking about he's not winning the 50-50 balls. Well, let's be real. Not every ball that is thrown up in the air is a 50-50 ball. Sometimes it's a 20-80 ball. Sometimes it's a 60-40 ball. The percentages change based on where the ball is placed, who's defending him, and what you're calling. And one thing that has been very common when they throw these 50-50 balls to Keon is they go back shoulder a lot. And it's clear those aren't working at a very high rate. So maybe that's something that they need to work on. Maybe they need to figure something out. If we're going to give the ball in a 50-50 contested catch situation, maybe we have to change the throw placement. Maybe we need to throw it higher. Maybe we need to take some speed off of it. Maybe we have to make a number of different changes. I'll say this. The Bills knew what they were getting when they drafted Keon Coleman. So my bigger belief is that the Bills are not using Keon Coleman properly more than Keon Coleman isn't talented. Yes, he maybe he doesn't fit what the Bills are trying to do, but Keon Coleman is a guy that can produce at the NFL level. Now, being a wide receiver 1 in his second year as a raw prospect is probably a poor fit for him. And that's one of those situations where I blame the coaching and I blame a little bit on Keon when you hear him missing drives because he's getting benched for a series or 2. So I think there's a little bit of an immaturity thing going on with Coleman. I think there's a little bit of coaches putting in not the best positions to succeed. And I think they need to kind of figure out how to work things out. If I was the Bills, I definitely would try to go trade for a receiver. I think that's a must at this point. What type of guy? Who knows? But you definitely need to add a receiver to the room just to mix it up. Now, defensively, which was what you originally were tossing to me about, there's not as many great answers, but there's things that they can do. And one last thing about the offense, too. The offensive line is great. Dawson Knox, I know we hate on him. He's been a top 10 tight end, blocking tight end this year. And Dalton Kincaid is an above-average pass-catching tight end. Like, the Bills offensively, outside of Keon, like, their guys are fine. It's almost the same group as last year. But I'll get to the defensive point. What they got to do defensively, you got to have Shaq Thompson play more. He's been their best linebacker. He's been one of the better linebackers in the league, according to Pro Football Focus. He needs to be on the field a lot more. And you brought up, AJ, the Bills are not playing nickel nearly as much as what they have in past years. Some of that might be because they're not always playing ahead or not leading by as much. And some of it is they can't stop teams running attacks in nickel right now. So they're being forced to adjust. And when you talk about Bernard, Bernard's a guy that benefits from the nickel because it fits his attributes. But if you're going to be running 4-3, like that's a little concerning for Bernard. He's undersized. He doesn't fit it great. They're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with Bernard and Milano because I think Thompson needs to see the field more. Now, if you don't see Thompson see the field more and they go back to Bernard Milano when Milano's healthy, I'm going to be concerned that this coaching staff is more worried about how things look than what they need to make the team better right now. That'll be one takeaway. Number two, Hoyt and Ogunjobi should help this defensive line. If for no other reason, then they provide depth, and it means that some of these rookies don't need to see the field as much. You look at defensive end. Bosa has been getting a lot of pressure. Rousseau has been okay. He's been pretty decent, not getting the sacks, but he's been decent. Ebenezer at times gets pressure. But Hoyt is really one of the difference makers because of his hybrid role. Ogunjobi, you need him just from a numbers perspective. You had 3 defensive tackles against Atlanta. Like that plays a big role. When you have a rookie in Deion Walker that doesn't have gap integrity, and then you have a guy like Ed Oliver who is a good pass rusher but a below average run defender, and then you're playing Jordan Phillips who is more of a guy that can create pressure but also weak in some of those areas.
He's just terrible.
But like, let's be real, Jordan Phillips is a practice squad. Like we look back against
that's
Atlanta,
what I mean. He's terrible.
but we look back against Atlanta and we're like, why did they struggle against the run? Well, how about they hit 3 defensive tackles and none of them are good against the run? Like I'm not saying that Deion Walker is like horrendous against the run, but like you hear it constantly. Like he hurts the linebacker sometimes because he's not filling the right gaps. So Ogunjobi at least gives them a veteran presence that knows what he's supposed to be doing. And then you have options to switch and rotate guys in and out. And hopefully Daquan comes back soon. And then you can kind of solidify the middle of the line. Linebacker-wise, I already talked about that. And then corner-wise, I think Maxwell Harrison, it's going to be interesting how this all works out. If Trey was playing solid football all year, I would say it would be his job for the rest of the year. I know Harrison struggled in training camp. There's no guarantee Harrison's even going to be ready or looking solid enough to play. But you know what? You got a ramp up period up ahead to where you can see what he's going to do. You bring him back to practice, and then come mid-November when he's ready to play, give him some reps. See if he can hold his own. If he can hold his own, start giving him more reps. And to the point where maybe in late December, maybe you do think he's the better guy. I wouldn't count on it. Like I wouldn't say my whole season's revolving around that, but that's something I think you got to monitor going forward. And then safety room, if they don't make a trade for a receiver, they should make a trade for safety because right now it looks like Jordan Poyer needs to be on the field, and that's not a good situation for the safety room. And I don't love PFF grades, and partially because they say that Cole Bishop has been okay when I think the eyes say that he hasn't been. And Taylor Rapp, this is one of the worst regressions year to year I've ever seen. Like Taylor Rapp was at worst an average player last year. Like some moments he had good moments, and this year he's been atrocious. His tackle rate is so low. He's looked slow at not only getting to spots on the field, but like tackling and everything. Like he's just looked off. So I think you might need to put Poyer in more. And then, like I said, the Bills in the second half against Atlanta, what did you see? Bernard was out. Poyer played 18 snaps. They went a little bit more man-to-man. And Atlanta had some struggles in that situation. They had 3 points. So my biggest takeaway defensively is this team is not talented enough and not good enough against the run right now to just stick with their bread and butter nickel defense. They have to switch looks up. They have to do some 4-3 more. They have to switch things up. They have to put some of these old guys that might not be as athletic as some of the younger guys, but at least they have the brains and they know what they're supposed to be doing. At this point, I need the Bills to be communicating, not overthinking, and just being in the right spots. They do that, that's going to be better than what they've been doing the last maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is. So I do think that they can keep things manageable. Like at the end of the day, like points allowed, like they're not getting grilled. They allowed 24 against Atlanta. They allowed 23 against the Patriots. They allowed 19 against New Orleans and 21 against Miami. And the Jets had 10. That's a 5-week span where they're allowing under Basically, they're allowing like 19 points a game. Bad opponents, but like you would expect to like go 4-1 during that stretch, or maybe even 5-0 if you told people that points allowed totals. So while the defense is bad metrically, there is some hope, but they're going to have to rely on pass rush, and they're going to have to make some adjustments.
Part of me wonders, as we're sitting here talking about that, you guys made a lot of great points. I don't have the things that I wrote down here. The biggest things that need to change is the predictability and play calling, which AJ mentioned with the first and second down rush rate and the way that they've been doing that. And it's just, it feels like situationally Joe Brady has become a little predictable in what he wants to run. Even the dumb flip pass that they get to is on that falls short of Ty Johnson a couple weeks ago, is on a mesh pattern that they've basically run. If they're passing the ball on a third and short or fourth and short, they're running mesh. Like, it's been on film for the last couple weeks. Like, they're very predictable in what they do, even if it's not, even if it works. Like, it's just become too much of hammering the same things there. The usage rates of the offensive weapons, I think you guys touched on that both equally. Like, I mean, what are we doing here? Dalton Kincaid not on the field more than 50% of the time. Last week, James Cook was only on the field about 50% of the snaps. Like, when you're a team that doesn't have a host of elite offensive talent or elite talent across the board in general, like, those guys got to be on the field. And we talked about it last week, like having some dogs, like some difference makers, some game changers. Like, those are your two game changers on the offensive side of the ball right now. They need to give them as many reps as it can. Are they guys who have been, you're worried about usage because they're going to get dinged up and everything else? Sure, maybe, but that's the risk reward you kind of have to take here in the NFL. And maybe they're saving it for later in the season. So who knows? Like, that's why a lot of this, like, we're going into week 8, like, we're not even halfway through the season yet. So we can't just fully admonish whatever the team's going to do, because hopefully,
Chill, Mike. This is
chill Mike so far.
Yeah.
We'll see. We got some time left. He could.
It's gonna be chill, Mike. I'm not doing anything tonight.
AJ's on his best behavior.
We got to give the people what they want.
Okay, the Chiefs average 32 points a game with Rasheed Rice and
That'll next week will definitely be a easy one to trigger.
Oh yeah. Tune in next week. I'll get Mike going.
We'll really get him going then. And then you mentioned it, but the D-line reinforcements, I've been harping on it, and we've all been harping on it since the beginning of the year. Like, let's see what the defense, we know, and the beat reporters and everybody doing the great work around the team has told us how much of a plan they have for Michael Hoyt. We know that they didn't bring in Larry Ogunjobi to just sit on, like, I mean, they might not have wanted to sign him after the after this finding out about the suspension and everything else, but he's here to play a role. He's getting paid decent money this year to play a role. So these are guys that they're paying. They don't pay anybody really big money except Josh Allen. Those are two defensive players that they're paying a decent chunk of change to be role players on this team and have a real role. So let's see what it looks like when they're there. And we've seen the pass rush rate has been good. They haven't gotten home as much as we want to, but how much of a marginal difference does adding those two guys and keeping guys fresh and just having those options do for the line, and then for the linebackers, and then for the secondary in tow? I'm in agreement with you about the if they're going to look to, if I had to pick one position to improve on, I would rather find if you can find an improvement at safety to play it for Taylor Rapp, because that position has just been a hole. And I think that, we saw the success of the Sean McDermott era. I've seen a lot of tweets the last couple of weeks of realizing how elite Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer were at their peak, and just the communication and what they were able to do as the real quarterbacks of that defense back there, and kind of disguise, and being able, as my dad just mentioned in here, like with the disguises and everything. Like, I think they want to disguise coverage a lot. I think that's a lot of tenets of what the McDermott defense does, but it's hard when you have guys back there who don't know what's going on before the snap, especially at the back end of the play. So if you can get a reinforcement at safety to change that room, and maybe if it is just Jordan Poyer, it could be an improvement on there. But the biggest thing is I just feel like we all have gone a little too far into the issues of where this team is at, because there is defensively, with the suspensions and the injuries, like there's real reasons to think that they could improve just on that alone. And just by simply using your offensive talent a little differently and utilizing some of your skill players a little more and putting them in better positions. I think somebody in here in the comments earlier said something about 17 receptions to running backs this year. And a couple were last week to Ray Davis. Yeah. 17 through 6 games is absurd when you saw the usage that they had last year. So part of me wonders, like, and I don't want to give the coaching staff this out, but I'm like, how much are they just like, how much of it is this the real, like we've been asking, we noticed it last year. We talked about it last year with the Chiefs, like the Chiefs save stuff for the Bills. They save stuff for the playoffs, XYZ, and all these great teams that do that, save things for December. How much of this is the Bills? I don't know if it is or not, but is it them saving stuff? Is it them being vanilla? Is it them doing something different at the start of the year because they want to unleash something later in the year? We talk about Allen running the ball and doing that. Like, are they just holding him back because they don't want him to take those hits early? Maybe, maybe not, but we can't. If we sit here and try to figure that out, we could just talk in circles all night long. We'll never come to any like kind of thing. We have to deal with what we've seen so far in the play on the field so far. And so I think that there's a couple of just simple tweaks. I really think that this is not a disastrous scenario, but just a couple different things that they can do. Now, I do think this, if there is a chance this year, guys, and I want to hear what you think, AJ and Bundt, on this. If there is a chance to take a swing, and this is, I'm a little bit inspired by this comment about a potential Bundt rant on Brandon Beane. I don't know what Bundt's exact feelings about Brandon Beane are.
That'll come down the line later this year.
Is this the year that you go all in and make one of these trades at the deadline for one of these, whoever, if it's a wide receiver target, if it's a defensive line target, whatever it may be? Is this a year that you do? Like, what do you expect? So we talked about what we want them to do, I guess. So AJ, what do you expect them to do? Do you expect a move to the personnel? Do you expect small tweaks to the game plan? Do you think they're holding stuff back and saving it for later in the year? Do you think that they've put their best foot forward the first 6 weeks and are searching for answers themselves? Like, what do you actually expect them to do in response to this, like this last couple weeks and then coming out of the bye?
I mean, I think I just look at it like logically. I don't really expect them to do anything in terms of bringing someone in. Now, that could change, and I am bringing – I think the wide receiver talk will be cool, and it's, you know, people love talking about it on Twitter, and I do like the conversation. I don't really want Shaheed. I don't think it does anything for me. I'm really only in on Chris Olave or Jacoby Myers at this point in the receiver room. But I think, like, I'm team safety more than team wide receiver at this point. And I know that's crazy because I'm like, it's a bottom 10 wide receiver unit. But with that said, I've always said that I'm okay with that. And I think, again, you know, with the emergence of Dalton Kincaid, who it is weird that we're so reliant, or the Bills are so reliant on Dalton Kincaid this year. It feels like when last year their offense was so good and he was like not good at all. So it's just weird how from year to year that changes. Because we talk about like how we compare like the weapons each year and how they're kind of the same. But it's weird how Dalton Kincaid now has become such a focal point when last year he was not that good or really below average and the offense was really good still. But regardless, I think I am team safety over a wide receiver. I just think that the safeties, counting on a 34-year-old Jordan Poyer, I'm sorry. It's a nostalgia feeling. It's a bias feeling. I think with him because he was so good for the Bills. And I think that fans, you know, want that. And I guess not all fans, but some fans do want them to go that route. Now, I'd be okay with it just to see what happens with it. Like, I'm not going to say that Jordan Poyer is going to be an upgrade over Taylor Rapp. I think you can still downgrade from that. I mean, we saw Jamarcus Ingram. Trey White hasn't been good. Jamarcus Ingram has been worse. So he's not even playable at this point. So I think with safety, I do want to see them bring a couple of guys in, one guy in. A couple names that I'm looking at. Ryan Talbot put together an article over on Syracuse.com, Bills beat reporter, for his safety options potentially. And a couple of guys, Jason Pinnock from San Francisco. He is a capable starter, but he's now buried on the 49ers depth chart behind a couple of names. Malik Mustafa to be one of those guys. Jeremy Chin, a lot of Bills content creators loved Chin coming out a few years ago. He's another name. He's over in Vegas. And then Ashton Davis from the Dolphins. Probably not likely because it's in division, but the Dolphins are so bad that, he's a very cheap contract. He signed a 1 year, $2.5 million contract this season, so he's cheap. He's not going to be owed a lot of money. So I think they tried the Derek Forrest experiment. DeMar Hamlin's now on IR. And Jordan Hancock, I just don't think in my mind they're confident enough with him based on what I've seen for them to just say, let's put him right in and tell him to go start at safety. So for me, I think the offense with Josh Allen and a bottom 10 wide receiver unit and James Cook and the offensive line, they proved they could do it last year and they figured it out. Now, Amari Cooper probably did help with that. But I think with Bean and his signings in the offseason with Palmer, $12 million, I think the Curtis Samuel investing into Elijah Moore, you have Kincaid, you invest in a second round pick in Keon. I don't really know. Again, if it's Chris Olave, I'm going crazy. And that's probably my dream move. But if I'm thinking logically, I just think the safety play has been so bad. And I've seen the offense do it without a star receiver that I think they need to address it because they need the help in run support. They need the help in the passing game, and they need a true difference maker on the back end of that defense. And they do not have one right now. So I want a safety and see what he can do, bring a guy in trade for one. I don't know how many are going to be available, but that's kind of what I would want. But my expectation is Brandon B doesn't do anything, and they, try and figure it out. We'll see.
I don't think you can ever expect somebody to make a trade because it takes two parties to agree to something, and history shows us that NFL trades are not the easiest to make mid-season, but that's kind of changed in recent years. So Bean has been someone that has shown that he is willing to make moves if he thinks there's an opportunity to improve the team mid-season. We saw it with Rasul Douglas. We've seen it with Amari Cooper. In the past, he brought obviously Kelvin Benjamin when he thought that was going to help the Bills back in 2017. They're not always guaranteed to work because another team.
Yeah, I just laughed. Calvin Benjamin just cracks me up. No, I do not want to. I do not want to catch balls from you before the game. No, I do not want to work on my routes.
And you got to remember, if a team is giving up somebody, there's a reason why. Sometimes they might not think they're as good as what you think they are, or it could be a contract situation or a player that is looking for a change of scenery. Maybe they're discontent. So there's always a lot of different things that feed into it. I'm kind of I'm fine with safety or receiver. I don't really have a preference one over the other. I like the idea of receiver, but a lot of this is in the NFL, there's a lot of egos involved. And do you do the things that are best for your team, or do you do your things based on current contracts and status on a team? If you trade for a number one receiver, knowing that you have Khalil Shakir as your slot guy and you have Josh Palmer as your wide receiver 3, you're probably dropping a guy like Keon from your number one receiver to potentially your number 3, number 4 receiver. So that could create some internal discontent on the team. That could create other problems. Realistically, I think it's probably the best move to make, but it could create some issues. Now, maybe Keon goes to wide receiver number 2, and in that role, maybe he thrives with less attention focused on him, and we see him put up numbers. And if Keon ends up, say the Bills get it a number 1, like Olave, and then Keon suddenly putting up 50 catches for 800 yards, we're going to realize in that moment that maybe Keon wasn't that bad. He just wasn't in the right spot, in the right fit, which a lot of times you can see. A hockey references, Dylan Cousins and Jack Quinn playing on the Sabres second line. They're not second liners. They should never even be near a second line. Just like Keon probably shouldn't be a wide receiver 1 in the NFL at this current point in time. Now, the safety thing is interesting because I definitely think they could use a safety. I will say this. You kind of went a little bit on again about Jordan Poyer, and there is this nostalgia element to where that's why some fans want to see him. I would also make an argument, though, he probably is an upgrade over what you currently have. Now, like that doesn't mean that like you want him out there, and that like if I would have told you in the beginning of the year like Poyer's starting safety middle of the season, that like that would have been a good thing. But we gotta look at like the margins. Like you got to improve everything on a margin level. Like you're not going to replace below average production with like a Pro Bowler a lot of times. Sometimes you go from below average to average, or average to good, good to great, great to elite. Like if Jordan Poyer can go out there and be average, that's a lot better than anything you're getting right now. And I know a lot of people are like, well, he's toast, he's done. Like, I don't know if you can say based on what he did in Miami that is accurate. Like, sure, he had a down season by Jordan Poyer standards, but he's still graded out as a 62.5 on PFF. He played the entire season. He started every game. He finished with 98 tackles last year. Like this is not a guy that was a backup that couldn't even see the field. Like Poyer finished with nearly 100 tackles. Like we have guys that don't even know how to make a tackle right now. Like we have guys in the back room that don't even know how to call a play out properly. They don't even know how to communicate. Like Jordan Poyer, just knowing the defense is an instant upgrade on those guys. We're like, people are like, what was the biggest complaint about Jordan Poyer? Oh, he's a little slow. Have you seen Taylor Rapp out there? Taylor Rapp looks like the slowest guy on the field. He looks like me trying to.
Poyer's not saving that touchdown against Drake London, though.
I understand it, but it's about the margins. Is he better than what you're currently?
I don't know. I have no clue. 34. I don't know.
I'm just basing it on production last year.
Yeah, no,
Jordan Poyer last year was 96 out of 171. That's basically mid tier. Right now, Taylor Rapp
was worse than that, though. If you listen to people and talk, I know PFF says that, but he was worse.
That you can have that opinion, but you know what the Bills are having right now? They're having the worst safety play in the NFL. So you know what?
You have to. I agree. You have to.
The Bills, Jordan Poyer could be the 25th ranked safety. Could be the not let's say strong or free, whatever you want to say. Jordan Poyer could be the 25th ranked safety out of 32 in his spot, and that would be an upgrade for the Bills defense right now. And that would be worth it, because if you're getting marginally better at safety, and then you put Thompson in there and you get marginally better, and then you get these guys back, Hoyt and Ojinobi, and they're marginally better, that will have an accumulated feel. That will all come together and it'll have a bigger impact on the team. It might not we always think like they need a huge player. Like they're not getting a star safety middle of the season. And what's the biggest thing that new players, when they come to Buffalo, say about the Bills secondary? They say it takes a long time to figure out how to play within their system. Taron Johnson said it took multiple years before he figured out nickel corner. And you're going to try to acquire a safety week 7, week 8, week 9, and just throw them in there and just assume that they're going to play at a high level.
Can't get worse, though.
But that's what I'm saying. Like Jordan Poyer, for as bad as he played in Miami last year, that's a new team for him. That's a new system. That's a new group of guys he's never played with. In Buffalo, he knows what McDermott wants. That's why McDermott has had guys like Josh Norman come in at 34, 35, and they actually can get by for a couple games. Like, I'm not saying that Poyer is a long-term answer or a long-term fix, but like it can't be much worse than what they're getting right now. And that's like the big story here is that the issues that they're having, they're not just bad. They're like near the bottom of the league. Like the Bills linebacker play is near the bottom of the league. The Bills safety play is near the bottom of the league. The Bills corner play has been, some EPAs show like okay, but if we're being real, like the Bills corner play has been bad. The Bills defensive line has been all right. But if you can get marginally better in different spots, it will make a difference. And the only real reason why I might slightly prefer receiver over safety comes down to this. I think the Bills could score 27 points a game regardless of what their like receiving core is and how they shape up. As long as their offensive line is halfway decent, they're running the ball for 4.5 yards plus per carry, I think the Bills can score 26, 27 points a game. But I do believe if they could trade for a more impactful receiver, that could give them another element to where teams will be more on the hook. Like they have to decide, are we going to go after the run? Are we going to go after the pass? Are we going to try to shut this down? And that could open up more avenues. I don't expect if the Bills get like a receiver that they're suddenly going to look like the Brian Dable Buffalo Bills. But I do think they might be able to open things up a little bit more, which might lead to more aggressive play and calling on those second and shorts and those second and 3s and 4s that they've been running. Their philosophy has been, let's just continue moving the chains. While they might need to open it up a little bit more and take some shots. I'm not talking about a ton of shots, but a shot every once in a while. And then just have that disguise. And the ironic part is this. We all talk about how the Bills passing game has been woeful at times this year, yet they lead the NFL in explosive play rate in the passing game. The Bills, according to explosive play rate, are the most explosive team in the NFL at the current moment. And that might shock teams. That might shock fans. But it's one of those things, and I hate being the guy that says this. The NFL is not.
You love it. You love being the guy that says
that. On Red Zone every week. Red Zone is showing all the touchdowns. They're not showing you the 3 and outs. They're not showing you the stalled drives at the 15, 20-yard line. They're showing you all the points. And it's like people that watch the evening news. I worked in the TV industry for 5 to 10 years, depending if you count.
I'm saying that too.
But
props to you. That's good. I'm not.
People that watch the local news on a nightly basis have a more pessimistic view of their communities than the average person living in their communities. Why? Because they're constantly bombarded by bad things happening in their communities. So they think, oh my God, it's so bad out there. It's so awful. Like maybe if you live in like, I'm not going to name places. I don't want to get any heat. But like if you live in some places, maybe it's true. But most places it's not. It's the same thing when we're evaluating football. We see some of these other teams like Seattle hitting big plays to Jackson Smith and Jake, or Baker Mayfield making some of these big plays. And we assume like that's the entire rest of the NFL. It's not. And most teams across the league would love to be the Bills offense. And the most common incorrect narrative is that it's just Josh Allen. It's not. The Bills have a great run game. They have a good offensive line. They have pieces and tools around Allen. Everybody says they have no weapons. An offensive line, a good offensive line is a weapon. A great running back is a weapon. And if the Bills didn't have the offensive line they had, if they didn't have James Cook, if they didn't have Dalton Kincaid, I guarantee you this offense could do a lot worse than what they're doing now. Kansas City averaged 22 points a game. You take away this offensive line and James Cook at running back, the Bills could be just as bad. So it's not just all Josh Allen. He carries the team. But there are other elements to this offense that produce and help them contribute at a high level.
Very well said. I think that, and that speaks to my point is earlier on, just being like the crash out that has happened since last week. It is just like deteriorate. Like the fan base's mental has just deteriorated as the week has gone on, like waiting for this game to happen. Worst bye week possible scenario going into the bye week was losing the 2 games the way that they did for everybody's mental health in Western New York, because it really has like it's made us just sit here and fester and just like build up all this angst towards everything because we haven't seen a fix yet. We didn't get to watch football on Sunday. We got this, but you see, Drake May throw a 45-yard touchdown pass against one of the worst teams in football, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's over." Like the Patriots have taken over the division. We're cooked. It's just, and there's just the hyperbole in that. Listen, and this is AJ's great at this, and so I'm trying to take a note from him. Fan bases are emotional. Most fan bases live week to week. They're just gonna ride. If their team wins, they're the best team in the league. If they lose, they're the worst team in the league. And when you multiply that by the angst that was already we discussed it heading into the season, how much of whether it was true or not, it felt like a make or break year for McDermott and for Allen and for this regime and for this iteration of this team, because they got so close last year and because then they had to start the way that they looked and everything. It's like, oh my God, like the 1 seed is locked up. We're going to run away with it. We're clearly better than every team.
That's my fault.
But that was a little bit of Bundt's fault, a little bit, but that's okay because that's just how these things develop over an NFL season. And it is just as likely to me that the Bills are a 500 team the rest of the way as if they end up like 13-4. And I think that it's I think that we just have to look at it as, no, they're not going to be the super dominant team. Probably not going to, especially with the defense in the current shape. If they're playing like this, they're not going to be the super dominant team, like the point differential being, a historic through the year. But they're still a really damn good football team who's going to beat a lot of teams, and they're going to be in all the last 2 weeks. That was a 10-point loss to Atlanta and could have easily been a 1-possession loss, whatever. It's a 3-point loss. And it's not like when the Bills start getting blown out back-to-back weeks, then I'm really going to start worrying about it. When they're playing C- games and still have a chance in the fourth quarter to win, you just have to take those things in perspective when you're watching games around the league and seeing a team like, real bad teams like the Titans, like the Dolphins, like everything else. The Bills are clearly in the upper tier of the AFC. They're clearly going to be around there in the playoff picture. And the thing you want to have is a battle-tested team going into the playoffs. And the Bills are battle-tested. They're, besides Kansas City, the most battle-tested team that's going to be in the field this year. And that kind of thing matters once you get into December, once you get into January, and those games start getting bigger and the stakes start getting higher as the season goes on. So that's my bit of optimism. What about let's get into our preview here in predictions for the Carolina Panthers this week. Week 8, tricky game. I mean, the Panthers are such a weird team, man. This is such a weird team. They've won all their games at home. We're 1-3 on the road, with the only win being over the Jets this week. And the Jets owner just called out Justin Fields in a way I've never seen an owner call out a quarterback today. So the Jets are down bad. So I don't know what to make of this team. We're playing the good Panthers team, obviously at home, but no Bryce Young. And Bryce Young has been pretty damn good for the better part of the last 2 years. We get to see our old friend Andy Dalton once again, most likely on Sunday. I'll be in the building in Charlotte. So if I see a Bills loss and they drop to 4-3, now the crash out might really happen for me. You guys won't want to hear me next Tuesday. Well, maybe you will, but you won't want to hear that. And this is a great point. And that's a part of it with the fan base and everything else. And so I understand that. Like I can see that and I can feel that. Like every loss is going to be a big deal, especially as the year goes on, and especially this year because of where they were at the end of last year, right? Like when you are 3 points away from the Super Bowl, it magnifies that pain lingers for just a little bit longer than a divisional loss, whatever else. Back to the Panthers though. This is a really interesting matchup, mostly defensively with these reinforcements and with no Bryce Young. What is Rico Dowdle going to do? Rico Dowdle didn't have 300 yards again last week or 250 yards again last week, but has still been an impressive weapon. The Panthers I like what I've seen from Dave Canales and their offense. Their defense is solid, but they're not a great unit. They're not great in the red zone. They're not great on third down. And those are things the Bills should be able to take advantage of in this matchup. I think the Bills coming off and has to be noted, Sean McDermott 8-0 in his career coming off of buys. If there's anybody putting pressure on themselves, it's the Bills in that room the last couple weeks. They're better. They're better than this Panthers team. I think the Panthers are frisky. I think they're scrappy. I think this will be a close game through mostly 3 quarters. But I'm going to pick the Bills. I'm not picking them to score 30 points to get back up to 30 points, but I think they win 27-20. I think they'll get out of this game with a nice win. Not a win where they're a world beater and you're feeling like, oh yeah, we're back. We're going to take on Kansas City. Welcome all. Still going to be enough spots for some nerves for the Kansas City game. But I think the Bills get back on track, get to 5-2 and get a win over Carolina this week. AJ, what about you?
Yeah. So, really quick, it's funny. Your dad said Bills fans live in fear that Josh Allen's career will come and go without a Super Bowl victory. Every loss is magnified. The drought lingers in their minds. And that's like the crash out stuff. And like, I get why people get upset. And because, Mike says deep down, I am a common fan and I associate with the common fan. So like, I think that for me, it's like, okay, I look at it this way. The glass half full people, right? They're going to be super loud the first 4 weeks. Oh my God, this is the year. It feels different. they're blah 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 blah. They're going to be so good. They're going to win the 1 seed. They're going to, this everything's coming together. But the glass half empty people are like, yeah, we'll see. Well, now it flips. Now the glass half empty people, which again, I think it's pretty even in this fan base, anecdotally. Like I think that I know a lot of glass half full people. I know a lot of.
Who took over your dad's account, AJ?
Yeah, what he's
34-17. He's feeling.
He's feeling good.
He must have had a good day with his class in school. But yeah, I think like it's just funny. Like now the glass half empty people are being super loud, and now the glass half full people are like, well, so it's like why are they crashing out so much? But I think the glass half empty people, or when the glass half full people are like, oh my god, this is the year. They're like, all right, let's relax. So like it's just like it's just how it goes, man. Like that's just everything.
A vicious cycle.
Yeah, it's just a cycle. The glass half full people take it too far when it's really good. The glass half empty people take it too far when it's really bad. And that's just how it is. That's how it goes. But going to the game here, I like my dad's prediction, 34-17. I'm looking at some of the numbers here for the Panthers. They're 23rd in the NFL in points per game at 20.7. 19th in yards per game with 326.7 yards per game. They're really bad in yards of play. They're 25th in the NFL at 5 yards per play. And then another interesting note, their third down conversion rate is bad. They're 21st in the NFL at 37.36%. And then their red zone scoring percentage is middle of the pack at 59.09%, which is good for 15th. Defensively, I think they've done a pretty good job. They allow 21.7 points a game, which is good for 13th. And they allow 295.7 yards total per game, which is 7th. JC Horn's playing like I think one of the best corners in football right now. They have some players up front. I think Ashawn Robinson's having a good year. Derek Brown is another player in the middle. And I think they do have some talent on that side of the ball. I don't think it's great. Former Bills punter Sam Martin is over there. So I think they have talent. I think this Bills offense and defense and team and just their moxie, they need this win. The Panthers have yet to lose at home. I just don't see the Bills losing in this spot until I see it. They've been in this spot before. I don't think you can lose when you're going to, you got Kansas City next week or in 2 weeks, which I think that's going to be an interesting discussion of how that kind of, I'm going to see how Vegas handles that line. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I think the Bills win this 30-20, cover the spread, get the 5-2, bounce back. Bills fans feel a little bit better. But if they do lose, it's going to be, it's going to be a fun day. Well, not a fun day, but it's going to be a
fun day.
A lot of my emotions about this team on next week's podcast.
Yeah, that won't be a fun day for me if they lose, AJ. I'll tell you that. But I'll say this: like for the glass half empty people, like your father, who surprisingly has the Bills doubling up the Panthers. This is a big narrative week for them because if the Bills lose to Carolina, like there's no like
the glass half full people.
There's no like spinning that like
it out.
That would almost be to the point to where I'm not saying the same level, but like when they were 6-6 after losing to Philadelphia, where they had the Kansas City, I think the next week, and you realize like, oh my God, if we don't beat Kansas City and win like at least 4 of our last 5, like we're missing the playoffs. And if they lose to Carolina, it's going to be like, now we have Kansas City next week and they're on fire lately. Could we be 4-4 and we still have the Texans and we have the Bucks and we have Philadelphia and New England on the road? Then you're like, oh my God, like there's a scenario we could miss the playoffs here. And then it gets a little bit tense in that type of scenario. But we're far from that at this point. The Bills are a better team than Carolina. And I will say the Panthers have been impressive this year. Like they have started figuring some things out. And Bryce Young has been a big part of that. He's really started to step up his play. Not saying that like he's been even an average quarterback. I still think he's a below average quarterback in the NFL. But he started showing some signs of maybe he can be a starting quarterback in this league. Maybe he does have the ability to grow and turn into something. The problem for Carolina, they don't have Bryce Young in this game. And some people say, well, that's a bad thing for the Bills. Andy Dalton has been great in the league, and he's had a lot of big moments, and it's probably a little bit scarier with him in the game. I completely disagree. Andy Dalton at one point was a pretty good above average quarterback. You could make it an argument. Maybe he was a top 5 to 10 quarterback at one point during his career, but that was a decade ago. And that was when he had Ajay Green and he had a lot of weapons around him in Cincinnati. He's been a journeyman for like the last 7+ years. He hasn't been able to really stay at a place for too long. He was in New Orleans. He was in Dallas. He's been able to stay in Carolina for 3 years now as a backup. But this is the way I look at it. Bryce Young is a higher ceiling, but he's also a lower floor. Andy Dalton, you're probably getting a much more level performance, meaning I don't think Andy Dalton comes in and just is egregiously bad. I don't think he'll be horrible, but I also don't know if Andy Dalton at his current age is going to be great. Bryce Young has some escapability. He's not the best, most mobile quarterback in the world, but he's young. He has a little bit of elusiveness. He has a lively arm, and the Bills haven't been able to, quite frankly, bring down the quarterback enough. Is Andy Dalton going to be able to avoid sacks if the Bills are getting to him? Is he going to be able to step up in the pocket if the Bills are generating pressure? I don't really have a high level of faith that Andy Dalton will be able to do that. So this is more of a game, in my opinion, of can the Bills generate the pressure that they have the entire season, but in this game, can they actually bring him down? Because they're not playing the same level of quarterback that they have in recent weeks in terms of that elusiveness. Michael Penix Jr. has some ability to escape a little bit. You look at Drake May, the Bills had a good game plan for the Patriots offensively. It's just that Drake May had some amazing improvised plays, and he tore them apart on the unscripted stuff. I don't know if Carolina's talented enough to really enforce their will on the Bills unless they get their running game going. And I feel like the Bills' plan of attack is going to be let's slow down Dowdle and Hubbard and see if Dalton can beat us in the air. And if they can limit the Panthers' running game in certain situations like the Jets did last week, I think it could be a long day potentially for the Panthers' offense. But we'll see. We'll see. I'll give my prediction now because we're at an hour. As you guys all know, I based Vegas to make my picks, but I've had some unsuccessful moments recently doing that. On this show 2 weeks ago, I picked the Bills 35-21 against Atlanta, and that was far off. And later on, before the game, I told Jake, can I change my pick? Because I think the Bills might actually lose tonight. And they end up doing so. And I'm going to end up showing that I've learned nothing from 2 weeks ago. And I'm going to pick the Bills to cover. I'm going to pick Buffalo 31 to I'll say 31-20, just because I don't want to pick the same exact score as AJ. And I think that they'll rebound in this game. 2 weeks is more than enough time for them to game and come up with a strategy. And I think going into Kansas City at 5-2, Bills fans will get all hyped up, and they'll be talking about it as if we beat Kansas City, we get to 6-2, and the Chiefs fall to 4 losses, we're back. So we'll see.
I love it. All right, we're all on the Bills because I'll give Carson and Partham their picks in here. 24-16 for Carson, 24-17 for Partham. So you guys, we're all pretty much in the same area there. We're all expecting a little bit more scoring from the Bills, but it's gonna be an interesting week. And can't wait to see what happens Sunday. I can't wait. No matter what, I can't wait to be watching Bills football again on Sunday. It's a blessing. I can't wait to see how they respond and go from there. But we paid the Bills. Shout out to our sponsor, Picasso's Pizza. Get your Picasso's Pizza anywhere nationwide and in Western New York at picassospizza.net. For Mike Bundt, for Ajay Cebulski, this is Jake Micah. We'll be back next week talking this Panthers game and previewing just a matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs. Nothing more, nothing less. We'll be back then. Talk soon. Have a great week. Go Bills.